today we're talking to Kendall Graveman. Kendall Graveman's a great friend of mine. Kendall plays professional baseball and pitches for the Houston Astros. So we go through his journey. Now, I just got finished doing this, and it was probably one of the best episodes that we've ever done from a story perspective, from an advice perspective. So we talk about how after his freshman year at Mississippi State, playing baseball, he nearly quits, and how his dad refused to let him quit. And the journey from sleeping in a house with 8 other guys and one of them's wife to sitting there talking to a guy by the name of Derek Jeter in the last 2 weeks of his major league career, and the advice that Derek Jeter gave Kendall, and all the different things in between. You are going to absolutely love this episode with Kendall Graveman. First question I always like to ask everybody: who are you? What do you do? And why does it matter?
I'm Kendall Graveman. I play baseball, and I guess it matters because we entertain a lot of people every year. I mean, ultimately, that's been in the game in the big leagues for 9 years. I figured out that I'm an entertainer. Yep. Feel like a traveling circus sometimes, and that's, I guess, why we do it.
Sure. So the hard part about doing these types of conversations is because I know just about every question I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
But some of these things, I like I had Ari on here, and I know Ari as well as I know you, and there were a bunch of things that she told me that I didn't know about her. So there's always something in there. So baseball, play professional baseball, that's really, really romanticizing to a lot of people. And there's a lot of kids out there that want to play professional baseball, basketball, football, whatever. Okay. Take me back to being a kid. How were you raised, your folks, all that kind of stuff, and just what was that like being a kid? Like growing up, like did you always want to be a professional baseball player? Give me some thoughts there.
I think I didn't set out to be a professional baseball player. I just had a passion for the game, and I think obviously I know where it stemmed from. My dad played collegiate baseball. He just enjoyed the game. He coached. He's still coaching. He's retired from teaching. He taught for better part of 32, 33 years, and he's still coaching. He taught elementary PE, K through 5. So he'd come home sometimes.
Balls out.
Yeah, he had a great PE setup too. Like if they were learning dribbling, like everybody had a basketball. If they were jump roping, everybody had a jump rope. Like the whole deal. Everybody had bowling pins in the alley when they like in the gym set it up. So. Now looking back and being in some PE classes, but seeing how he operated it, there was a spirit of excellence that was always there. So, my mom also would support like going to the ball field and doing that. It was a family thing. It was a thing that my brother and I would go, and so my dad coached for 18 years at Childersburg High School.
Okay,
and then when we got to the age where we were playing like city league baseball and rec sports, my dad felt like he was missing out. We were living in Alexander City. He was traveling back and forth. Yeah. And he was also coaching after he would teach, and it was just long days, and he'd get home late and miss a lot of stuff that he felt like when we were born, he stopped coaching baseball. He still taught there.
Sure.
But it would give him afternoons where he'd be home.
Right.
So my brother and I started playing youth baseball, and one year my dad would coach my age and my team, and then the next year he would coach my brother and his team. So he'd flip-flop. Yeah, so awesome. It was great. So we both got to get coached from him, and then the next year we'd have a coach that was of another parent, Right. And so for me, that's how it went. Got into middle school, and my dad got a job in Alexander City as a PE teacher there at one of the elementary schools, and then he jumped on board as an assistant with the baseball team. So he actually coached me through junior high and high school. So he's able to get back into coaching at the high school level.
So really similar to me in the fact that you grew up, there was always a coach there.
Right.
Dad was a coach just like my dad. So that's really, really good. So growing up, if you were 12, 13, 14 years old and Johnny, the rando postman, came up and said, what do you want to be when you grow up? What did you say? Did you have any thoughts in your mind about what you want to be when you grow up?
I think back at those ages, honestly, I wanted to play collegiate baseball, and I didn't really think anything past that. That was it. I went to the SEC baseball tournament in Hoover every year, and I grew up an Alabama fan. I wanted to play for Alabama, and I wanted to play in the SEC specifically.
Sure.
Because I would go watch those teams, and man, this is the coolest thing ever. I never really went to big league games or watched a whole lot of that. So that was my dream, was play SEC baseball.
So the biggest thing, I think it started, and I'm a little older than you are, the biggest thing that started when I was a kid was travel baseball.
Yeah.
Okay. So travel baseball was a big deal. How much were you involved with the whole travel baseball scene? Because that's like, I'm going to be honest with you. We have kept our kids, and this sounds horrible, and I hope I don't offend anybody by saying this. We've kept our kids away from baseball and softball.
Right.
Because in some of the places I've been, the culture around travel baseball can be a little toxic, meaning parents are crazy, kids are playing abnormal amounts of games,
Right.
The kids are playing all year round, those types of things. So tell me, what was your experience like growing up? Because how old are you? 30?
I'll be 33 this month.
33
in
this
December.
month. Okay.
So for me, I just think it's when I was in high school and in junior high, it was fairly new.
Yeah.
You know, I played a couple summers, but it was like 4 weekends, 5 weekends in the summer, you know, that
Didn't
I would
play
go.
in the fall.
No, I played football all fall.
Yeah, you did.
And I still think it's very important, like, to play as many sports as possible. I played basketball all the way up to high school. I played football all the way through middle school and high school. I played baseball. Like, it was a revolving door of what sport I was going to play next. And it wasn't like we were traveling all over the place. And I know now, looking back, I have kids of my own, but and they're getting a little bit older, and they're about to be in this stage of life where they may want to play sports or be into something. I understand how time consuming it was, but it was also refreshing for me as a kid to advance to another sport and not just play one sport. And I think from the athletic standpoint and from the development standpoint, doing different things. I played soccer when I was younger in a city league. I played tennis, a rec league in tennis. Like, I played a lot of sports.
Yeah.
So I think it helped with the development of that.
When did you figure out that you thought, okay, I think I can, I got a potential to be a college baseball player? When did the light bulb go off in your mind and go, I think I can do this at the next level?
Yeah, there was a guy named Scott Sullivan who played in the big leagues with the Reds most of his career for like 9 years.
Okay.
Relief pitcher. He was my summer league coach one year out of a team out of Auburn.
In high school?
In high school, like my sophomore year, maybe going into my junior year.
Okay.
And he kind of was volunteering the next year at Auburn, and I got introduced to the pitching coach there, who is Butch Thompson.
Yep.
And Butch started recruiting me, and then that kind of was the moment I was like, okay, well, if he's recruiting me, then maybe,
Sure.
you know, that's something that is plausible and possible for me in my next step.
So talk about the recruiting process. Butch was at Auburn, correct?
Butch was at Auburn. Slater was the head coach.
Okay.
I committed to play at Auburn.
Right.
Crushed my dad, Dad, big Alabama fan.
Big Alabama, roll tide.
Yeah, roll tide from the time I was born
Right.
till last weekend when we watched the game. You know, like, man, I'm telling you what, my brother the same way, like family, and they were like, oh man, we grew up 40 minutes from Auburn, so it was like everybody I knew was Auburn fans, and I just was happy they were going to pay for some of my schooling. You know, it's like, hey, this is awesome. And Slater got fired.
So you had committed.
I committed.
Head ball coach gets fired.
Head ball coach gets fired. Head ball coach doesn't get a job anywhere else. Butch gets a job and ends up going to Mississippi State as a pitching coach.
Okay.
But Butch, with his reputation, the man he is, he wasn't going to call us and try to take us away from our commitment from Auburn.
Okay.
The new coach at Auburn really didn't honor as many of our commitments as we would have wanted. And my dad actually called Butch Thompson while he was at Mississippi State. He was like, hey, y'all still interested in Kendall? Because Auburn's kind of in and out. And he said, absolutely. I wasn't going to put myself in that situation of calling somebody, taking them away from somewhere. And then they recruited me at Mississippi State. I committed to Mississippi State and ended up playing there for 4 years.
Gotcha. How did you like Starkville?
I loved it. Okay. It was just far enough from home where you know, I could go home on the weekends if I needed, but it was far enough where I felt like I was having to grow up. You know, Auburn would have been, Mom could have done my laundry on the weekends if I wanted, you know.
Well, I tell people this all the time, and I encourage kids, if you're 15 minutes away, you're still away.
Yeah. Not
being in there with mom and dad, because there's a portion, and I'm not a huge college fan. Like, I think that college, if you have to, this is awful too. This is the first podcast where we've just ripped on just
the mind of Thomas.
Additional things that my mind's coming out. I am not a huge fan of just like college.
Right.
I've got a master's degree, but didn't pay for anything.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of college that you like have to take tons of debt out to do all that with. If your folks are going to pay for college, if you get a scholarship,
Perfect.
freaking awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you, but when I was in college, I had a chance to grow. It is the perfect, in my opinion, perfect bridge, segue between being a kid and being an adult.
Yeah.
Because there's no switch that goes off to where you graduate from high school and all of a sudden you're an adult.
Right.
It doesn't happen. Your brain's not mature enough. It's not fully developed until like you're your mid-20s. So 18 to 24, 18 to 22, whatever, 23 for me,
Yeah.
is a growing time. And I grew so much, having to pay the light bill, having to pay the water, having to pay my rent, all of those things, so my car insurance, whatever.
Having to go grogrocery shopping.
Having to go grocery
do your
shopping.
laundry.
That's
all of
it.
Yeah.
So I think that was a huge thing for me. So being away, did you how far did you get a degree or did you get drafted?
I'm 8 hours short.
8 hours short
of a mechanical engineering degree.
Really?
Yeah. So I got 8 hours left. I got 2 labs, 1 class, which is a Chem 2 class because I kept dropping it every year, and then a senior level design class.
So what was the plan though? Like first year, I mean, everybody thinks they could go to the big leagues, but you had to have a backup plan. What was the plan?
Well, I went back after my first year getting drafted, and going back to what you were talking about, the development part, like I see it firsthand. Like there's guys in this sport that get drafted at high school, and there's guys that go into college and play. And you definitely see the difference, you know,
What's
of
the
the
difference?
development. The same thing you're talking about is being able to do life skills. I think number one is, and this is not for everybody, like this is just what I've seen from most. The development of social skills and social, like being able to communicate and do things on your own.
Right.
And then also, I think secondly is like the development I just see from outside of baseball, like having to pay car bills and having to not needing as much help because getting drafted out of high school, you're probably getting paid a lot of money. You probably can just get people to do it for you.
Sure.
I think college guys will figure it out more and say, hey, I'm going to go do it myself.
Right. The social skill aspect. So it just proves that it's okay to go to a bar and
Right.
talk to people.
Yeah, right.
You got to spend time in the bar talking to chicks. You got to.
Right.
Okay, so talk about Mississippi State. You're there. What transpires after there? What does it flow from there?
Mississippi State, 4 years playing there, and then got drafted by Toronto.
Okay, tell me about that. When people hear drafted,
they think
it's just like bells and whistles and fanfare and all that. What round did you get drafted in? How did that work?
My junior year, I got drafted in the 36th round by Miami. It didn't sign. I went back for my senior year. My senior year, I got drafted in the 8th round.
Okay.
For $5,000.
8th round.
8th round, $5,000.
$5,000.
Because in life's all about leverage.
Yeah.
And a lot of scenarios, I had no leverage. It was like, hey, come play with us, or you have no more eligibility in college.
What was the number that they gave you in the 36th round?
I probably could have got anywhere from 50 to 100.
So 36 round money for a junior.
Yeah, but I was thinking, look, what's the chances of me making it to the big leagues? I'll go try to get an engineering degree, and I'll make somewhere between 50 and 100 my first year out. It'd be an engineer.
So you were.
I knew we were going to be really good in Mississippi State my senior year.
So you weren't just hung up on, I'm going to play pro baseball.
I still wasn't in my mind of what I
Even
was
after
gonna do.
being drafted in 36th round as a junior.
Yeah,
I mean, it was there, but not like big.
I was throwing like 88 and maybe 90 miles an hour, and at that time, it's
Yeah.
like, who's gonna make it to the big leagues doing that? You know?
Okay, so what happened between your junior and senior year that you at number one moved up the totem pole and B got better? Like what was the
I had a good year. Nothing really changed as far as what I was offering.
Yeah.
But the way the draft was set up in the top 10 rounds, if they didn't spend a allotted amount of money, then they could spend it on 11 through 40. So they saved money on me. My slot in that round was who knows how much, $500,000, somewhere between $300,000 to $500,000. They paid me $5,000, saved that money, and paid it to somebody else in like the 35th round.
Really?
Because if not, then you pay a penalty over everything you pay over 100 at that time to somebody after the 10th round. They paid a penalty on unless they saved it in the first 10 rounds.
Got it.
So, I mean, that got real deep quick in the way the draft set up, but that's kind of why I moved up. Now, it helped because the money really ain't the big deal. Like, they draft me in the 8th round. That means something to people when they look at, where you were drafted. I get drafted. I go down on July 4th. Now, I just played in the College World Series. Our last year, we got beat.
Tell me about that.
It was amazing. Second best baseball experience of my life.
What's first?
Playing the World Baseball Classic.
Was it?
Playing for Team USA.
So we'll get into this in a second. So let's talk about this. I think this is fascinating, and you're not going to tell this. I will tell this. So this is from a guy that's played in the World Series.
Yeah.
Pitched in the World Series. Multiple games in the World Series. Pitched in the College World Series.
Yeah.
And the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah.
And you say, hands down, which was the best experience?
The World Baseball Classic.
Why? That's fascinating.
You got the whole country cheering for you. You know what I mean? You give me chill bumps right now. Think about it. Like, I don't know. Like,
I remember when you did that last year.
That was special. Like,
yeah.
Man, you got to get ramped up early. Got to get ready early. Got to get in game speed early. Like, we played that during spring training when we're like trending usually in spring training to get ready for a season.
Yeah.
Like, we had to be ready. There was 40, 50, 60,000 like fans. Man. And it was nuts. It was crazy. It was an all-star team too. You got Mookie Betts and Trout and like Arenado. You got everybody on that team. Goldschmidt, Real Muto catching. Like, the list goes on and on. Like, we could have, that was an all-star team, and then the pitchers and the fans, we played Team Mexico in Arizona. I know we're fast-forwarding a little bit, but like, gosh, that was the most. So going back, second best experience was the College World Series. Like, going to Omaha, representing Mississippi State. We had 6 wins and 24 losses my freshman year in Mississippi State.
Oh.
We were terrible. I wanted to quit. I called my dad.
Go back to the lake.
I called my dad. I said, look, man, I don't know if I'm cut out. Like, my dad always said, finish the season.
Sure.
Like, we ain't quitting middle of the season. That was a rule in a Graveman household.
Right.
And so I said, okay, well, it's the end of the season. I called Pops. I said, hey, I'm done. I'm out. And he said, no, you're not. And I said, all right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But you told me.
Yeah.
So I continued, to play. And that last year, I think that was one that made something special. Is we kind of built it. The group that I had, we had 9 guys from the state of Alabama go over there and play at Mississippi State. That was on that recruiting class that I was in. And like 7 guys that made it to the big leagues from that team.
See, I didn't know any of this stuff, so this is wonderful. This is awesome. Okay.
So Mississippi State.
You had 7 guys on one team go to the pros?
Not in the pros, debuted in the big leagues at some point.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a great team, but at the end, you play a 2 out of 3 series against another team in the College World Series, which happened to be UCLA, and that was in 2013, and they beat us 2 out of 3. So that was tough,
Sure.
I think the coolest experience and moment of that whole College World Series was during the finals, we're hitting batting practice, and they open up the gates at a certain time, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it's general admission seating. When they opened up the gates at that time, the sea of maroon that ran in, man, it was nuts. And it felt like the game had started. There were so many people there watching batting practice, and I never experienced anything like that. So we were there for 2 weeks, had a great 2 weeks. My parents and family came up and spent a lot of money staying in a hotel, but it was a memory of, of their life too. So I got drafted by Toronto. That was actually before College World Series, I'd already been drafted.
Okay.
So then you keep playing.
Yeah.
Like, knowing that, hey, next step, I'm going to go sign with a team.
Step. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. Went and signed with Toronto on July 4th down in Florida. I just played at the highest level of college baseball that you could possibly play.
Yeah.
And I go down to playing and watching like 16, 17-year-old kids from the Dominican and Puerto Rico. And I'm like, this is a different game. Like, wow.
What was different about it?
It took a step back. It wasn't as polished. There wasn't as much, very talented, very, very talented. But the fundamentals.
Raw.
Yes, raw, yeah. So I go to Lansing, Michigan after I signed, which is low A.
So let me say this. People think, and the reason I know this is because I know you, and we've talked a lot about the professional experience. And one of the most fascinating things about Kendall is talking to Kendall when he talks about the business of baseball. It's a 3-hour podcast in itself. Yeah. The intricacies that the things that you and I've talked about with, being able to play here and the dollars and the, all the different just all those different things, the deadlines and things like that. They're fascinating. So when people think when you get drafted, it's fanfare, but you go to, on the 4th of July, no doubt, you go to South Florida, and then you go to Michigan.
Yeah. They sent me to Michigan for like, I don't know, finish out for 6 weeks before the off season would have started. And I'm really like, what am I doing here? We're in Lansing, Michigan, bro. I'm in a house with 8 other guys living.
That have all been drafted.
Yeah, one of the guys was from, he was from Venezuela. His wife was there. She was pregnant. She spoke no English. But we just didn't have any money. Like we were all splitting rent. 8 guys in a house. I slept on an air mattress alongside a guy named Chad Gerardo, who I played Mississippi State with, in a kitchen with
So you're sleeping in the kitchen.
Yeah, on an air mattress, bro. He had his air mattress. I had mine. We had a little blanket. Didn't have no sheet to cover it. Just
Professional baseball player.
bro.
I got drafted.
And then
I played in the World Series 5 weeks ago.
Bro, I'm like, what am I doing? We had a little couch in the front, like had a little porch area, and we had one of those little grills, and we would like cook steaks out there. We felt like we was doing it, you know. Next door in the where it would have been the dining room was my now financial advisor, whose name's Kevin Patterson. He played at Auburn. He roomed with us, and upstairs was another 5 guys and a wife, and like we're paying like $100 a month trying to get by. I was making like $400 or $500 every 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh! So less than $1,000
Eating
a month.
PB&Js, like
Been drafted. So drafted in the 8th round
for $5,000.
for $5,000.
Government took $2,000 of it. So
and you're eating peanut butter and jelly and sleeping on an air mattress in a kitchen.
living life, just playing ball.
Yeah.
I mean, I still love the game.
Yeah.
But
This is the real picture, folks.
I still didn't think I had a chance to make it to the big leagues.
Yeah.
I told myself, this is an honest truth. I told myself, and I told Tori, who I was dating at the time, who's now my wife, I said, look, I'll give it 3 years. I'll reevaluate after 3 years.
Yeah.
If I think I'm going to get to the big leagues, I'm going to do whatever I can during that 3-year span to get there.
Anything.
If I don't, I'm going to reevaluate. If I think it's unrealistic after 3 years, I'm out. I'll go work. If I think it's realistic, I'll keep going. Or if I've made it at that point, I'll keep going. So fast forward, one off season, took classes, went back to Starkville, tried to finish up my degree. Went to spring training the next year. They sent me right back to Michigan, low A. So the way baseball works, I mean, you got low A, we got rookie ball, you got low A, high A, double A, triple A, big leagues. So there's like, and there's
So you're one step from the basement.
yeah, there's like 4 or 5 other teams in front of me before I get to the big leagues.
Wow.
I mean, every team's got 25, 30 guys.
Yeah.
So they send me back. I went pitch a month in low A. I get bumped up to high A.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, all right, well, this is good, you know.
Yeah.
2 months in high A, get bumped up to double A.
Okay.
Make 1 start. They say, call me in the office. It was a trade deadline. I thought I was getting traded. They said, hey, you're going to triple A. So I'm like, man, this is amazing.
We went from low A,
Yeah.
second to the basement, second from the bottom,
In the first year,
in the first year, all the way and getting bumped up to AAA in months.
in a matter of 4 months.
So why do you think they did that? Were you just on fire? Were you pitching
Yeah.
good? I mean,
You know, I'd thrown the ball well. I was polished. I was older. I'd already had 4 years of experience in
Reps.
SEC, you know, in baseball. Like a lot of times guys get drafted in high school. They spend those 4 years in the minor leagues developing. I was fortunate enough to develop in college.
with great coaching and great
great
ball,
coaching.
playing against good competition.
Great food, great atmosphere, like
Right.
all of it. So AAA, and then the end of the season was upon us. Like 5 days before the end of the season, they called and said, hey, we're putting you on the big league roster. We're going to call you up.
This is
So-
Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto.
Okay.
And that was 2014, September. They called me up. Look, most guys have a chance to meet everybody on the big league team because they'll invite you to big league spring training. So in
Right.
spring training for a few weeks, you'll be with everybody that's in the big leagues.
Sure.
I had no idea anybody that was there. And
No
they
clue.
had no idea who I was.
Same.
I hadn't met anybody. I met people all along the way for the whole year.
Right.
And so was able to, I threw like 4 or 5 innings out of the bullpen, which I was a starter at the time. I threw 4 or 5 innings out of the bullpen, and then they traded me to Oakland. Yeah. They said, beat it.
Okay, so you get 4 or 5. So you get traded to Oakland at the end of the first year?
Yeah. At
Okay.
like Thanksgiving, I was at my parents' house. I remember I woke up, I fell asleep on the couch like one afternoon. I woke up and I checked my phone. I had missed calls, messages, everything. Everybody found out except me. I was sound asleep. So found out I got traded to Oakland, and then kind of bounced around since then.
So, okay, so that's I did not know that transition. So you go to Oakland. I knew you were in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in Oakland. How did the transition start in year 2? Like now that Oakland had you,
Yeah, Oakland.
where'd you go in spring training?
Big league spring training,
Okay.
and then I was like 8th or 9th on the depth chart as a starter on Oakland's team. I gave up 1 run that whole spring training. I pitched really well.
Right.
Broke camp with the team, and then pretty much stayed up in the big leagues like 2015, 16, 17, and 18.
With Oakland.
Yeah, with Oakland.
Okay.
And then had surgery on my elbow, Tommy John surgery in 18.
Okay. Why did you have one instance that happened, or was it over time that you got hurt?
I really don't know. I made a start. I felt good. The next day I went to play catch. It hurt every throw from then until the 6 weeks that I rehabbed.
Really?
So I don't know what happened between when I threw 110 pitches in a start and then the next day, but it didn't bother me when I pitched.
Talk about this. You can talk as much. I mean, this is probably public knowledge. We could go back and look it up, but you talk about as much as you want. When did not normal money start for you? Like when you got pulled up for Toronto, or when the first year in Oakland? When I say not normal money, you know what I mean. Not $90,000, $80,000, $50,000. I mean, when was what was the minimum at the time in Major League?
I think the minimum when I got called up was like $575 a year.
Okay.
But I was paying 40%.
California.
I was paying 40% to the Fed, and then I was paying 11 to 13% to California.
So you were half.
And then I was paying rent in the Bay Area. So
Wow.
I mean, I'm not complaining, but I'm saying if you're looking at it from a perspective of like, oh, he took $575 home. No, I took some money home. When I really felt like I got into money was the first year of arbitration, which was 2018 in Oakland.
So, okay, so a lot of people don't know what the word arbitration
Yeah, so
means.
for 3 years, you go on league minimum. And then
So you were on the league minimum for 3 years.
Yeah, for 3 years. And then the next 3 years, you go through a process called arbitration where they
Okay.
compare you to other players of similar, like if you're a starter, you get compared to other starters. If you're a shortstop, you get compared to other shortstops. And they compare your numbers. And based off what they've done and what they got paid maybe 2 years previous in arbitration, that's what you may get paid. And you got to go fight sometimes for that with 3 arbitrators. I win actually one time and lost. And it's the worst thing because you have all your agents and Major League Baseball representing you from the Players Association and lawyers, and you sit at a long table and they say how good you are and why you're worth X amount of dollars that they're trying to get paid. And then for the next 30, 40 minutes, MLB and the other side, the owners sit on the other side and they say, well, this is why he's not worth this much because he's bad at this, this, and this. You feel like the worst pitcher ever. And then the arbitrator decides, well, is he worth X amount or is he worth, not that much? So
Wow.
they make the decision on, well, we think he should have got paid. So I went to try to make, I think it was like we filed, I was worth like 2.5.
Okay.
They filed it like I was worth 2.1
Okay.
or 2.3.
Arbitration did.
No, the owners and the teams.
Okay, so Kendall,
So you have three parts of this.
You and your agent said, "Hey, we think he's worth $2.5 million a year."
Yeah.
The owner said, "We think he's worth $2.1 million a year."
Yeah. And you try to fight for the middle ground. And the arbitrator says, well, okay, we think he's worth 2.5 or we think he's 2.1. You either win or lose.
What did it end up that year? Do you remember?
I think they filed at 2.36 and we filed at 2.5 and we lost and we got 2.36.
2.36.
Yeah.
Okay. And
that was the first time I felt like, man, we in some cash.
How many years was that?
That was 5 years into my big league career.
5 years. Going from sleeping on couches, sleeping on an air mattress,
Yeah.
grilling steaks on a mini grill,
Yeah, to 5 years
to
later.
5 years later. So it was not like sign a contract, I'm a millionaire.
Yeah, some people it's like that, but for me it wasn't.
Yeah.
But
for most it's not though, right? I mean,
I would say for most it's not like millions right off the jump.
Sure.
But I think as you go along and continue to play, then the money gets better.
Yeah. So first year you're in Oakland with the larger salary. So let's just call it $2 million. You're at $2 million at that time. What changed for you? Were you married to Tori at the time?
Yeah.
Okay. What changed for you and Tori at the time financially? How did you? Because lifestyle creep is a real thing. Professional athletes and spending money like a drunk engine is a real thing. Tell me how it goes from making $500,000, which is a lot of money, but again, it's not $500,000. Like,
right.
And it's not $2 million.
Yeah.
It's not.
Right.
So tell me what the lifestyle differences were from 500 to 2 million.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that didn't change was, and I had a chaplain tell me when I was at Mississippi State, we went through a whole bunch of stuff. And like I remember the conversation I had with him. His name is Matt Jolly, somebody that's dear, like super close to me. He told me and we read in the Bible, like, hey, if we're diligent with a little, I believe we can be trusted to be diligent with a lot. Mm-hmm. One thing that hasn't changed, even though the numbers have gotten drastically more, we still give the same way.
Yeah.
So our first 10% of every check we've ever made, we've given to the church. Like, we believe in that. And now we give more than 10%, but we believe that's where it starts.
Right.
So we go 10% of that. We live off, I got to pay agent. So I pay agent 10, and we live off 10, and we save 70.
Yeah.
So with that rule in place, the lifestyle creep has happened a little bit simply because that 10 we live off of has increased some. But we still save 70%.
You save 70% of your take-home
That's
pay.
our goal. Always. It's been our goal from the time we started when I was making league minimum.
Impressive.
My take-home money, we've saved 70%. And that to me is something that Tori trusts me with the finances. I communicate with her some. She's like, I don't care.
Y'all hear that?
Like,
some.
She gets bored with it.
Yeah, sure.
You know, but I tell her, like, we're living off 10%, and we try to stick to that. Yeah. And that's where, that to prevent lifestyle creep and the challenges that come with it, that's kind of where we stuck with.
Yeah.
So
you're in Oakland, you're at the $2 million mark. Where does it progress from there? How long are you there doing that?
Oh, I got elbow surgery, and then they said we're going to non-tender you for your next contract.
What does that mean?
That means you got fired.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. Like, you done.
Non-tendered is a nice way of saying
that means that they didn't want to pay me 2.4 for the next year to let me sit there and rehab, because I wasn't going to be able to pitch in 2019 because reconstructive elbow surgery, Tommy John surgery, I was going to be rehabbing for another 12 months. And they said, we're not going to sit here. Some teams would have to get
under contract
for 1 year contract. Okay. It goes 1 year to 1 year.
So you were at $2 million and then you get hurt.
I got hurt and I got no job. I was working out at a Planet Fitness for like 2 weeks trying to find a job.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That's when I met you.
I called you around then. Yeah. I'm like living in Arizona. We just had a baby. Like my firstborn was born. Mm-hmm. Didn't know where my career was going. I thought it might be over, And the Cubs called and they said, we'll sign you to a contract, and a big league contract for a league minimum to rehab. And then that was 2019. But 2020 will tack on an extra year, but we get the option to pick up that. Now, if we don't want you in 2020, we can say beat it, and that's it,
Is that the only offer you had?
Big league offer.
Yeah.
I might have had a couple more, but once we got the big league offer, we was like, that's it.
So you rehabbed with a league minimum salary?
Yes.
For a year?
In Arizona the whole year. Best year of my life.
Why?
Because everything slowed down.
Yeah.
And I just got close to God. Yeah. I just said, look, this is what I'm doing. Like, I felt like it was discipline in a way. Yeah. It pains me to say, but
sure.
I was just living, fun, big leagues, like hanging out, not doing anything like crazy, stupid, but it was just like so distant from God,
Yeah.
That time, I remember this house like it was this morning. There was this little office space. I would get up every morning and read. It changed my life,
really?
And that to me was like something that I wouldn't trade for anything. And I didn't throw a baseball in the big leagues that year. It was the best year. It made me who I am today. Yeah. Struggle, the pain of trying to get it back, and sucked. There
Sure.
was days I was like, I'm done, bro. I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
But at the end of the day, now looking back, super thankful for that season of life. And during that season, I had a benign bone tumor in my neck. We've talked before, and we talk about it like, man, for 6 months, 8 months, I was like, I have no idea why my neck hurts every waking moment, every time I lay my head down. Like, it never stopped hurting.
Right.
Finally figured out what that was. Couldn't do surgery on it because it was too close to my spinal cord. Whole list of things. I really thought that, hey, now it's really over,
Sure.
you know? And the Cubs said, no, we don't want you. And then, so they didn't pick up my contract going into 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle calls and said, hey, we'll sign you. 2020 was COVID season. We didn't start the season until halfway through the summer.
Right.
I pitched, made 2 starts. My neck was hurting so bad I couldn't do it anymore. I'm sitting in Washington, at University of Washington. I called my agent. I said, I'm done. Like, it's over. I had a good career. I'm over. I'm done. And then my pitching coach called and said, what if you throw 1 inning for us? You know, maybe be a reliever. So I started thinking.
So at this time, let me go back. I think this is where the transition started. At this time, you've been a starter.
My whole career.
Mississippi State, Toronto, Oakland,
high school,
everything. Always been a starter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I said, well, maybe I could pitch 1 inning at a time, turn around, do it the next day. It'd probably relieve some pain, you know, from not throwing 100 pitches to throwing 15 to 20 pitches in a day. So I called the trainer and the front office in Seattle, and they said it's a last-ditch effort. Like, either it does or, like, you're done. Like, that's it. So they allowed me to try to be a starter. And I said, hallelujah.
Yeah.
A reliever, sorry. I said, well, let's go try it. And from then on, I've had a much more successful career. Like, as a reliever, I've been a lot better than I was a starter in every aspect of it. I think it fits my personality a little better to be able to impact games as much as I possibly can. And that year and the next year in Seattle was great. Like, had a good year. I got traded
Did
in
your
21.
neck still hurt, though?
It did, but we figured out, like, I could take a stronger non-steroidal anti-inflammatory and it would help. And then one off season, miraculously, like,
Amen.
no pain. I ain't had pain. I had to take medicine, nothing.
That's awesome.
Never had surgery.
Wow.
And blessing, man, because for almost 2 years I dealt with it and I was just over it.
So he comes in and says, hey, let's try this. So really, this sounds silly, but the pitching coach is the one that brought this up. Pitching coach doesn't bring this up.
Then
you're coming back to Birmingham.
They were going to put me on the IL for the rest of the year. Who's going to pick up a guy just had surgery, made 2 starts in the past 2.5 years, has a neck injury? Like,
ain't nobody picking.
Hey, it was over. It's over. I was already thinking about what I was going to do next.
So he said, hey, come be and you were a middle reliever. What is it, a middle reliever?
Yeah, they just was like, hey, just do some relief appearances because they didn't know how it was going to work out.
Sure.
You know, it was
they
like,
wanted to get their money's worth too, I would imagine.
Yeah, they can't put me on the late inning deal, and I've never done it.
Yeah.
So I had 9 relief appearances that year. That was 2019. No, 2020. They renegotiated my contract to be a reliever with a ton of incentives because they're like, if he's healthy and he pitches the way we think he can, he's worth making, X amount of money. But if he's hurt, then we'd only want to pay him $1 million.
Sure.
Which is fine. I mean, that's reasonable. So I go out and had a great first half of the season, and then they traded.
21.
That was 21. I re-signed with Houston. I re-signed with Seattle, and then halfway through the season, they traded me to Houston.
Okay.
So that's what.
So tell me this. Tell the story. This is hilarious. Tell the story about being traded from Seattle to Houston.
Seattle was finally getting in the AL West conversation.
Okay.
Houston been the dog in the West for numerous years.
Yeah.
Right? Ain't nobody beating the Astros.
Yeah.
Seattle was a couple games back of Houston. This was late in the season, right
you were
before the
competing
deadline.
to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was trying to get Seattle in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I was in. We had a good team, a bunch of nobodies performing well. It was great. So the night before I got traded, we hit a grand slam, ended up finishing the game late in the game, and beat Houston to pull within a couple games of the division.
You're playing with Seattle.
Against Houston. In Seattle. Place was going nuts. Vibe around the city was on the up. Like, people was like, oh, the baseball team is getting better. Like, you could see the trend coming.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of carried on till now. They've been great. That was the first part of it. And there was a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
I show up to the field the next day. Obviously, there's rumors. Graveman might get traded. 2 weeks before that, I had already canceled. Like, I ain't getting traded. I'm staying here. Like, we're trying to push. And so I show up to the next day. I'm going out for my throwing program. This is like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The game's at 7. I walk outside. I then get called in the office and say, hey, we need to see you in the manager's office. And that's not an everyday thing. Like, you just don't get called in the manager's office. Right. I'm like, all right, what's going on? Obviously I kind of know. I step in, I sit down. It's me, the manager, and the assistant GM sitting there. And they said, we've traded you. And the only thing that came out of my mouth, I said, to whom? And they said, to the Astros. And I said, I hated the Astros, bro. I mean, like, all the stuff, the scandal, playing against them. They beat us all the time. I was in Oakland, the same division.
Right.
I was in Seattle, the same division. I'm tired of seeing them guys beat up on everybody. Right. So half of me was like, I got to go tell everybody in Seattle, all my teammates, I've been grinding, trying to get to the playoffs. I'm out. They watched me pack up my locker, bro. I ain't never seen a group of guys come off the field mad. Like, because in that moment, it feels like the team gave up to the other guys.
Sure.
Not knowing what they got in the mix for coming down the road. All they see is the moment. So I pack up my locker. I'll walk 200 yards in the bowels of the stadium, drop my bag off in Houston's locker room, and have to say hello to all those guys. So within a span of like 20 minutes.
But you pitched against the night before.
Bro, I pitched against the night before. People I didn't like for forever.
Yeah.
But I went from like, all right, we might have a chance to make the playoffs to, I might have a chance to win a World Series. Yeah. So there's so many emotions going on, bro. And then there's reporters right here like, hey, what do you think about the trade? I'm like, I ain't had time to process a thing. I sent Tori a text.
I still got my saddle hat on.
I got changed. I sent Tori a text, said, hey, we've been traded. And I don't even know if I remember telling her to who. I just was like in a hurry trying to get. The game was about to start in a couple hours. I'm trying to go get fitted and get a uniform for the Astros and everything. Boom. Hey, we've been traded. I don't even know if I responded back. Then I put my phone in my pocket. I'm out. Like, I got to go get my job done. So introduced myself to Dusty Baker and the whole crew and, meet everybody.
I love that.
It was fun.
So tell me about the rest of the season.
Rest of the season, pitched well. Got to pitch in the playoffs.
Did you pitch that night?
No, okay. Dusty had so much feel as a manager, he said, I'm going to give you 2 nights off.
Yeah.
He said, chill, get used to everybody. We don't need you for 2 nights. We got it.
Great.
Yeah. I was like, thanks bro. I need that.
Right. So go from there. How did that season end up?
Good. Finished up season. Playoffs. We played in the ALDS, and then we played the championship series in Boston, or against Boston. That was fun. Being in Fenway in October, cold environment. Man, what a place. I remember watching it growing up. Yankees, Boston, the playoffs, like, it's fun. And then played the Braves in the World Series that year. Got beat by the Braves in the World Series. That was, in itself really cool.
Sure.
Like, how many people get to say they pitched and performed in the big leagues?
The World Series.
The World Series.
So transitioning from there, where after the World Series, what happened? Because at this point, you were up, like Houston just signed you to a 1-year contract, and so you were on the market, quote unquote. Yeah, free agent that year, and had a good year going into free agency, which was obviously always the goal. Great. You show you're trending. We're about to have a lockout that added to. I remember that.
And everybody knew the lockout was coming. Mm-hmm. New collective bargaining agreement, all this stuff. So
now let me say this. This is behind the curtain. When this lockout was coming, I was sitting there and I was talking to you on the phone. And I said, hey, what about this lockout? And you're like, nah, bro, it's fine.
Yeah, it'll be all right.
They'll get it done.
Yeah.
And like you called the shot. Like you called the shot. They're like, hey, they got to X number of games. But as far as TV is concerned, because of the money, they'll get it figured out. I'll be darned if it didn't play out exactly how you said it. Yeah, the business of sports.
Nobody likes losing money.
Especially the billionaires.
So it'll all work out at the end. They'll get it figured out.
They did.
And they got it figured out. And I signed a 3-year deal with the Chicago White Sox before the lockout.
Yeah.
So going into the next year, pitched with the White Sox.
This is your big contract.
Yeah,
this
it's my big contract.
Like a Hallmark contract as far as like a career.
Yeah.
Made good money, and it's more comfortable than you've ever been as far as the financial part is concerned.
So we signed and I was public knowledge, and we signed a 3-year deal for $24 million at $8 a year.
Yeah.
And played first year there, played second year, which was last year there, and got traded back to Houston halfway through the contract.
That's right.
So we had a decision to make in the world of like being a free agent. Like there was obviously multiple options. It was really hard to say no to some of the teams, but from the financial standpoint, first time really being in it, that was the option I needed to make.
Sure.
Then getting back to Houston, it was like I never left. Same guys, same crew, same everything. Right. You know, so hopped back in. That was this year. Finished up the year with Houston, and got beat in the ALCS by the Rangers, who ultimately went on to win the World Series. They beat us in Game 7.
Right.
So
I remember that.
Yeah.
So multiple teams: Toronto, Seattle, or Oakland, Seattle, Houston, Chicago. Most people think that's a dream. It's not easy. You're having to pay exorbitant amounts of rent in Chicago, and you're having to live in Oakland and all these different things. But one of the things that we talk about a lot on here is, and we've talked about zero business so far, which is totally fine because this is an absolutely fascinating story. We talk about the culture of different companies, whether it be Church of the Highlands that's got 700 or 800 employees,
right,
or Mealfit that's got 14 employees, or the guy down the road that's got 3 people, or 50, whatever. The mood in the room, the culture of the people is important.
Right.
And baseball is a business. The bottom line, it's a business. Talk about the differences in the locker rooms. So you got. Let's just talk about the most recent ones. So you've got Chicago, then you've got Houston. Chicago, team hasn't been doing very well in the past however many years.
Right.
Houston, crushing it. Won a couple, 2 or 3 World Series in the last however long. Winning program, not a winning program. Talk to me about the cultures of the different locker rooms, because you talk about the locker room all the time when I talk to you.
Right. I think it's important, and I try to think through like, what does my next step in life look like, and ultimately, eventually, want to lead something and build something and grow something, and so I'm kind of always trying to see from the cultural perspective.
Yeah.
I believe, and this is just my belief system.
Yeah.
Like, culture starts from the top down.
Sure.
Right. Somebody's got to be. I think the speed of your company depends on the speed of your leadership and them being able to push and being able to progress and being able to lead a certain group of people. When that slows down and it gets taken for granted, what type of person that you are hiring, not just for their skill set, but for who they are as a person, from people to people, then you struggle. Yeah. I think on the forefront of hiring somebody, whether it be in the big leagues, whether it be, in a business like yours, I think we have to ask first, what type of person am I getting? Not what skill do they bring. Obviously, we can look at a sheet of paper of anybody in the big leagues that's played right now, currently, or ever played, and we can see the skill set.
Sure.
There's so many analytics now, you can really see the skill set of everything. That don't ultimately win. On paper, there's been teams I've been on that at the beginning of the year, pundits and talking heads around the country, like big name ones, have predicted that team that I was on to be in the World Series. And then you have a team in Houston, when I go to it, and these guys have built a dynasty over the past 8, 9, 10 years. I think you could have a special team and win in certain instances when you don't put together a good culture, but I think you can build a dynasty when you put together a good culture. And it's very hard to overlook talent and get a person that you know is going to drive you forward, opposed to getting talent and knowing somebody that might be iffy.
Sure. So go ahead.
I guess going back to it, it was a split deal in Chicago. It was tough. Like, we tried to make it work. It was tough. It really was. And then in Houston, when you have people pulling all in the same direction on the same rope to try to win a baseball game, even though they might think in their mind, we ain't as talented, but we know we pulling all in the same direction. And I think there's the unity. When you watch the Warriors play in the past, when they talked about strength in numbers, that's it. When you get the whole team to bond together like that, it's special. And that's why and it trickles down. Like, we're talking about Houston taking an extra step and taking care of our families at a higher level. When they talk about travel with our families, letting them travel with us and taking care of my kids. Like, I drop my kids off, or my wife does, when she comes to a game, in a room that has extremely good care, like daycare, child care in the afternoons. And throughout the whole game, she can go watch the game and the kids are safe. They feed them, like everything. Like, when there's attention to detail and a spirit of excellence, I think you can drive a company and a corporation forward. Yeah.
So one of the things that you've always talked about and is extremely important for you is Tori and the girls.
Yeah.
I remember numerous conversations the first time you're in Houston and even this last time you're in Houston about what you just said, how they took care of your family. And you can attest to this. Not all Major League Baseball teams do that.
Yeah, it comes down to, what do you value?
Okay.
You know, what do you value, and what do you understand that the player values? You know, like, every team has a set of value systems. Like, dude, you can look at each team, but word spreads when you take care of people's family, when you take care of their travel, when you take care of at an extra level. Yeah. Now, everybody, like, there was childcare in Chicago, and I'm not saying they did a terrible job. They actually made improvements while I was there, and I think it was a step in the right direction. But you got to continue to push forward and say, hey, we're in the top and the upper echelon of, like, taking care of Kendall and his wife and his two girls, because when they come to the game, I don't need him worried about them or they taken care of.
No. Like,
that's the last thing I need on his mind.
Yeah.
You know? And I need them to have an enjoyable experience for 81 times a year when they come to a game.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So we've started, the upper income stuff has started to happen. You and I have talked numerous times about next steps for you, but also because we don't really know what that is. You got one more year on this contract, right?
Yeah.
One more year on this contract. Hopefully, maybe some more years down the road, because I know you're extremely healthy right now. You train with Cal Tinsley, who does a wonderful job here in Birmingham, trains multiple major league, big league players. As you started making more money, what have you been doing financially from an investing standpoint? How have you been taking that extra 70%?
Yeah.
What have you been doing with that?
For me, a lot of it is, I told you, my financial advisor and somebody that growing up, and it wasn't a bad thing. It was just like in the house that I grew up in with my parents, it was just balance the checkbook, save, and have some for a rainy day fund.
Sure.
I didn't know. I wasn't very fluid in finances of, like, how to make money grow.
Correct.
Which is fine. Like, so what? They told me to save, and all right, good. Yeah. So now, opening up a whole new world of, like, creating dividends for myself, and like, all right, when my career's done, I have a short window to make money. It's very different than 99% of the world, where over a long time you create wealth. Over a long time you stack it.
The more you make.
I might be done after, like, if I don't play another year after this, I'm 33 years old with a front-loaded money. What do I got to do with it? Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, if I'm done after this year, I've got to create dividends and cash flow for myself from the market, and learning a lot by talking to my financial advisor once, twice a week, because he's a friend of mine. So it helps, and I trust him, about what are we doing, you know, and So that's where I'm doing a lot of it. And then secondly, you and I talk a good bit. We've went and looked at apartments in rural Alabama.
All kinds of crazy
we went
places.
all kind of places. Nothing has worked yet. But I still think it's a growing and a learning experience for me. It's been awesome. We're even doing some stuff now that you've introduced me to. So that's fun for me. I know that the way I'm wired, a lot like my father and my parents, I can't just sit, and be retired. I could from a financial standpoint, but I know that I want to grow something and build something. So I know the real estate side really interests me. Don't exactly know what that looks like down the road or how it's going to work its way out, but I think that'd be something that's in my future.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that we talk a lot about on here is being able to sit with people and meet with people and be friends with people and bounce ideas off of someone that doesn't know as much about things as you do.
Right.
Like I ask you a lot of questions, but I probably know a lot more about the business and real estate stuff than you do, but I still ask you lots of questions.
Right.
Like if I wanted Tegan to learn how to throw a slider, I would come to you.
Right.
But like real estate stuff, you've been coming to me. But I'll say this, you've helped me a ton, and I don't think I've ever told you this story. So I get investment deals pitched to me all the time. Like whether it be land, whether it be flips, whether it be apartments, whatever. I get stuff weekly. But I got pitched a deal about oil and gas. Remember this? Okay, so I looked at this oil and gas thing.
Right.
And we looked at this. I sat on the call. You sat on the call. And this is where the network of people helps you so much. So you sat on the call. You was like, hey, let me call my buddy in Texas that does so. I don't even know who it was.
Yeah, right.
And you called your guy. And you said, hey, this is what I'm looking at. It's I think it was $100,000, $200,000 an investment, but it was in oil and gas, which can be risky,
right,
but can be lucrative.
Yeah, for sure.
Risk and reward. And you called this guy, and the guy said, "Hey, is it so and so that's running the fund?" And you go, "Yeah," and then your buddy goes, "Stay away."
Yeah.
He goes, "Stay away." And I don't know if you know this, that fund has not done hardly anything.
Really? And I think that goes back to even the cultural aspect, because I don't think that they didn't think or believe in him to make some money eventually at some point. Obviously, the guy that we're talking about has made some money on some deals. Sure. I think a lot of that boiled down to the guy that I called that I trust made one phone call and was like, yeah, that's not the guy that him personally would be doing business with because of maybe the culture and the experience that he knows that guy may offer. So I was like, all right, we're out.
Yep.
And that's the connection and the network. And one thing that, that you've done a great job for me personally is even if you can't help me, you've always introduced and made connections, and you've not been scared of like, hey, you need to meet so-and-so, or you need to come up here and I need to introduce you to somebody, which I'm very thankful for, because ultimately your network's not the same as mine. But if we can come together and say, hey, I'm not scared of you, and you introduce me to one of the people that you do real estate with, I might do a business deal with that person someday. And you're okay with that. Absolutely. And that's what, there's no ego, you have nothing reserved about, all right, well, he might take a deal away from me or whatever. Like, we're in this, like, I don't say together, but like, hey, yeah, let's figure stuff out along the way. And I think when you have that and you strive and you trust each other enough to say, hey, this is what we want to do, or this is what I got on my plate, and talk through deals, there's a lot of learning. There's a big learning curve for me over the past couple of years.
Yeah. And I think that continues. And I think that as much as anything, you're learning about stuff, I'm learning about stuff. We have to continue to stay together and just figure out how to leverage each other's relationships, because you got relationships I don't have.
Yeah.
And I got relationships you don't have, and we need to continue to do those.
Exactly.
So we haven't talked much about Tori and the girls. Talk about the family life a little bit, and how, because what I know of her is amazing. She seems like a pretty headstrong girl. Like she knows what she wants. But just like being a coach, having a husband or a spouse that's a professional baseball player, it's not easy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of alone time. You're at the ballpark, it's 8-9 hours a day. Talk about that dynamic with the girls and the different places y'all have lived and how that's been.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of like giving up on sleep to try to parent. And I have told myself and made a commitment to Tori that I'm not going to allow this game to take away from me being the best parent I possibly can.
Yeah.
Like, I get home on a night game that starts at 7, say the game lasts 3 hours, 10. By the time you get out of there after treatment and everything after the game, I'm getting home at 11:30. If you pitch at night, you still got adrenaline. You wind down. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, the girls might not have went to the game that night.
Sure.
They might have been in bed at 9. They're up at 7:30, 7:30, ready to roll.
Alley!
Yeah, let's go. Like, why are you not up? They didn't care I played a game last night.
They don't
and
care.
I think for me, that's the biggest thing is like, Tori does a phenomenal job. Like, I'm on the road 81 games a year. And I'm traveling, and I'm going from Houston to Seattle, 4-hour flight and back. And the girls haven't started school yet. Lila, my oldest, is about to be 5. Lainey, my youngest, is 2. And we have another one on the way, another girl. And so that baby's due in May, and in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
So there's stuff that we've had to do that has made it. I guess we've spent money on like hiring out somebody to come babysit and keep the girls, and for an extensive period of time. Like, hey, Tori and I need to go for several hours. We need to go, and this time we may have to hire help. And Lila, my oldest, is about to start school, and I'm gonna be on the road. Next fall, she's gonna be in kindergarten, so we may have to hire a tutor or somebody. Where my thing is, and I had a teammate tell me, that was a Christian guy that I trusted a ton. He's like, we do not spend more than 10 days away from each other at any given point. We try to do 7, no more than a week, but sometimes I'm on the road for 12 days. Like, at some point during that road trip, the girls are coming to see me. Gotcha. And we're not going to spend that much time away from each other. And we just make it work. I mean, they travel. Tori is a master at traveling in the airport with 2 kids. The girls are on their scooters, like, going through airports. Like, she's had so many traveling hacks that I'm like, I'm so proud of you for figuring that out. Like,
and traveling with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old
is not easy.
No.
Not easy. And the girls do well. They have probably Lila's probably lived in 12 different places. She doesn't know any different.
She don't know any different.
That's her life, like balancing. Show up to this place and we got toys here. Show up she calls our house here the down house, because in Chicago we lived in a high rise. She called that the tall house, and this one's the down house. So she's like, all my toys are there, and then I go to the high rise when we were in Chicago and I had toys there, and it was just a blast, So they enjoy it, and it's stuff that I didn't get to see the world and cities. And hopefully I can play a little bit longer where, Lila gets to understand the experience.
Tell me what. Seeing the guys that you work with, how many of those guys do a good job financially? And how many of those guys spend money like it's got a hole in their pocket? What's the percentage there? What do you think?
I say 60-40. 60 being good, 40 being spend it like there ain't no tomorrow. And that's just a guess. I mean, that's just me kind of ballparking it. I think now with technology and information, that number's probably going up over the years.
Meaning more people are being more conservative.
More success.
Okay,
more
tell me
successful.
about this. What about your foreign teammates? What about your Dominican, your Cuban, your Mexican, your guys that are not from here, that didn't grow up in Alexander City or didn't grow up like that didn't super middle class? How are they with big dollars?
The thing that I find encouraging is how much money they will send to their family to help them in sometimes what we consider a third world country.
Yeah.
Living in poverty. Like, they have such a different perspective
really
on just life and money in general, that they're okay with taking care of immediate family and extended family because they don't want to see them suffer anymore. Not like in America where somebody may just want an extra pair of $500,000 shoes. Like, they're sending it down there for food and living, like legit needs.
Water.
Yeah, like stuff that they need. And I think that's pretty inspiring to see how they handle their money that way. And I'm talking about guys in the minor leagues that were sending their whole checks back home. Really? Because they could eat at the field if they needed to.
Wow. Before we wrap up, there's something I like to think about, and you're a little bit different. And we talk about advice and talk about what people have told you. What's the best, I say advice, what's the best thing that one of your older fellow big leaguers has given you advice on? What's the best thing? Like, man, that stuck with you and it resonates and you do that. What's the best piece of advice a fellow big leaguer has given you?
I think there's a moment that I always go back to. In my big league career, I just got called up. I hadn't even received a check yet.
Okay.
We're playing at Yankee Stadium. It's Jeter's last hoorah. Everybody knew he was retiring. So somebody that I grew up like, man, I played shortstop in high school. I was like, man, this is the best. So much fun to watch. Like, competitor, you talking about building a culture, build around that dude. Like, boy, what an experience that he won so many championships and all of it. So I'm sitting there. And this is advice from him, but also seeing, like visually seeing, okay? He's got I don't know, it's probably a week and a half, 2 weeks left in his big league career. We had just played a mid-afternoon game. And we played a night game. We had a mid-afternoon game. So their BP, their batting practice, was like at 11 o'clock that day. He could have showed up. The game was at 3. He could have showed up at 2:30, put on a pair of cleats. He's going to be in the lineup every day. Everybody was coming to see him. But at 11 o'clock, I step out of our locker room into our dugout, and I see Derek Jeter running from second base, working on getting a secondary lead and working on his base running. Like, my guy, you've played in the big leagues for almost 20 years. You know how to run a base, but you're out there working on base running. He comes around, rounds third. And at this point, the reason I wanted to go talk to him was ask if I sent a jersey over, could he sign it? The jersey costs like $300. I hadn't got a check yet. I hardly had no money. I texted my brother. I said, should I buy this jersey? He's like, yeah, absolutely buy the jersey. So I bought the jersey. I said, hey, I want to introduce myself. My name's Kendall Graveman. And he said, I'm Derek Jeter. Nice to meet you. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know who you are, you know, and he's a lot taller in person than I thought he would be. And he said, congrats on the call-up. And I said, man, can you sign a jersey for me if I send it over? He said, absolutely, no problem. And then he said, just remember one thing, always have fun playing the game. So I saw two things in that moment. I saw a guy that no matter how late in his career he was still working his butt off trying to get better. Wow. And I saw two that he's told me to have fun always playing the game and always enjoy the game. Yeah. And I thought those two things that really resonated with me from a young guy just getting to the big leagues. I'm standing in new Yankee Stadium with the backdrop of Yankee Stadium, right there shaking a guy's hand that's a Hall of Famer. And I thought that was something that will always resonate with me, that can resonate with me in anything. You know, always have fun doing what you're doing, you know, and always, no matter how much you feel like you've got it figured out, try to get incrementally better.
Wow. Well, I don't know that there's a better way that we can end this thing. You and I are fixing to go eat lunch together here in a minute, so I can get some more of the integral details. But Kendall, man, I cannot thank you enough for just coming in and sharing these things. I mean, probably 75% of the stuff I didn't know, so I'm super thankful for that. You're not on social.
No.
Nothing. No LinkedIn, no nothing.
No, I mean, I have all the accounts, but they're not. Okay. I haven't used any of them.
Put his cell phone in the comments so everybody gets.
Absolutely.
Hey, again, thank you so much. This has been great.
You.
I know there's so many people out there, business owners, and we have a lot of people that watch this that have kids. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the message you're saying is going to resonate well with them. So thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Thanks.
All right.